Joining me also right now from the Munich Security Conference, we have Democratic Congressman from Colorado, Jason Crow. He is a member of the House Armed Services and Intelligence Committees. Congressman, very good to see you. Thank you for joining me. So between Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's backtracking of comments that he made regarding security guarantees to Ukraine and the denial of NATO membership, and then Vice President Vance's address to European allies, how do you assess the Trump administration's performance on the world stage, and have they shown the U.S. will be reliable negotiators to end the war in Ukraine?
Alex, the Trump administration's policies are changing not by the day, but by the hour. And I think that's a reflection of the fact that they have no policy. There's no doctrine. There's no policy. They'll put out a tweet, then they'll pull it back an hour or two later. The problem with that is that, none of this is funny. None of this is comical because it has really real consequences to our partnership, to our allies. I am here in Munich because I refuse to let Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Secretary Hegseth and others be the voice of America to Europe and to the world. There is a group of us here that are engaged in diplomacy, are engaged in discussions to let them know that there's a lot of people in America who understand that our economy is tied to Europe, that our peace and prosperity is tied to Europe, and that we can't pull back into our own borders and forget what's going on in other places.
So in other words, you are trying to accentuate the word reliable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there has to be consistency. They have to be able to see that there are people who understand the issue, that understand that consistency and reliability is key. I believe in America's strength through partnership. One of the reasons why America is actually strong is not just because we have aircraft carriers and bombers and all these weapon systems, but because we have partners. Our alliances around the world are actually the envy of our adversaries. China, Russia, and others desperately want friends and allies that look like the ones that we have. They've tried to build out these alliance networks and they've largely failed. So we have this. And the answer to addressing our problems and our threats is actually to build upon it and expand it, not to pull back from those. But reliability and consistency and being a true good partner is the best way to build those partnerships.
So in terms of strength, that word I'm going to pick up on, because I'm curious what you make of Ukrainian President Zelensky's call for the creation of a European army. Is it justified, considering the concerns in Europe, that they can no longer rely on the U.S.?
I think it's too early to tell whether or not they can or can't rely on the United States. And, this notion of strength, I talked about what I think truly makes us strong. It's our partnerships, it's our allies, it's the fact that we are a values-based alliance and partnership with NATO and other partnerships. But listen, Donald Trump and his version of America, his retrenchment and his pullback is actually a small, weak version of America. He believes in a small America, a weak America that can't be friends, that can't engage with the world. I think history is pretty clear that makes us far less safe and makes our economy less prosperous. I think we have the leadership and the strength and the capability and the innovation to be a partner, to be engaged with the world. And in doing so, Americans will be better off because of it.
Okay, let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard, who is the newly sworn-in Director of National Intelligence and who will deliver daily intel briefings to the president from around the world, which of course feels like a tinderbox in many places. You were on the Intelligence Committee. Are you confident in her ability to advise Trump on our most pressing national security issues?
No, I have no reason to be confident. I opposed the nomination and encouraged the Senate not to confirm Tulsi Gabbard. There's nothing in her past that gives me confidence that she has the experience to do this. But also, I have very real concerns about some of her past statements, pro-Russian statements, her involvement with Syria and other places. So, we're going to see. She obviously was confirmed. She's going to be in the role. I sit on the Intelligence Committee now, which is the primary committee that has oversight in the House of our intelligence community. And I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to conduct oversight to keep America safe, to make sure we have intelligence, that we build alliances, because we get a lot of intelligence from our partners, from our allies here. This is another reason why it's important to have friends, because they have ears and eyes around the world too. and that information helps keep Americans safe. So I'm going to do my job, and I'm not going to back down.
Have allies there at the conference in Munich, have they expressed concern over her new role?
Some have. I talk regularly with folks around the world, and there's a lot of questions. So, there's not a lot that I can tell them right now because we're really early into this. But this is an example of why it's important to have people with not just the experience, but also that people can trust in these very critical national security positions. The test should not be total loyalty to Donald Trump, which unfortunately is more often than not the test for these really important jobs in the Trump administration. Listen, we're playing with live fire here, right? I was a combat veteran, or I'm a combat veteran. I served 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I can tell you the threats are real that Americans face around the world. The threats are real that our troops face around the world. And when things don't work, when government doesn't work, when things break down, people get hurt, people get killed. So the consequences are real, and that's why this is not a joke when we have people like Elon Musk and others running around firing people and dismantling these really important functions of our government.
Yeah, we thank you for that service and for sharing that perspective. Let me move to what's happening here in the U.S. regarding hundreds of thousands of federal workers who could be caught up in the administration's mass firing of probationary workers. More than 1,000 employees of the Veterans Affairs have been fired, and some civil servants working with the agency tasked with overseeing the U.S. nuclear weapons stockpile had been apparently fired, and now NBC News is learning they were just reinstated. Does this feel dangerously disorganized to you? And I'm curious the impact of gutting these government agencies.
Well, of course it's disorganized, right? I'm not against government efficiency and streamlining. I mean, every American knows that taking 8 years to build a bridge just isn't going to work. It's inefficient. It takes too long. We can't build infrastructure fast enough. We can't do a lot of really important things in the way that Americans should be able to expect. And I've been pushing hard for better process and reform, but that's not what this is about, right? That's not what the administration is doing. These are by and large performative theatric measures. They'll pick these one-off cases and they'll say this is broad policy. This is what an entire department or agency does or represents, and it's just not true, right? These people, these civil servants, keep our food safe, keep us safe when we're flying in planes, collect intelligence that is used by our troops, help spread the spread of diseases. These cuts to the National Institutes of Health, where we're doing cancer research and Alzheimer's research. People's lives depend on this. There's not a person in this country who hasn't been impacted by Alzheimer's, by ALS, by cancer, right? Life-saving research that's being done by these institutions, and they've just taken a hammer to it. Just have fired people, furloughed people, have chilled them. They're not doing their job, and Americans are going to die because of it, right? Every American should be really, really upset and up in arms about what's happening here. Let's have a real discussion about reform. That is not what's happening in the early days of the Trump administration. Yeah, your description there, particularly relative to Americans' health and security that way, is quite sobering. Let me get to the bipartisan negotiations that seem to have broken down over a temporary spending bill as a looming government shutdown deadline is less than a month away. And some of your Democratic colleagues are suggesting Democrats use a government shutdown as a political tool to protest Donald Trump and Elon Musk's efforts to defund and dismantle government agencies. What is the reasoning there, and do you agree it would be effective? Alex, let's be really clear. Democrats are not shutting down the federal government. The Republicans are in control of the White House. They're in control of the Senate. They're in control of the House. They are in control of every branch of government. It is their responsibility to govern and to pass a budget. They're the ones that have the votes. If they choose to weaponize that budget to advance culture wars, to advance their agenda that is out of step with the interests of Americans, that is their choice. Democrats are always going to be willing to govern, to extend an olive branch and do the work of the American people. But that is not the position that we're in right now, because we don't have the majority. It's the Republicans' responsibility to put forth a budget that can build a coalition and get the votes to pass.